So this review will have major spoilers on the entire film, fair warning. Funny People is a comedy drama from Judd Apatow. Judd Apatow has made some great films and series as a writer, producer, and director, and I love more than most of them, but this is my absolute favorite of his. I think it's because this is more of a drama than it is a comedy. All of his other films have drama, but they're more of a comedy. Like I said, spoilers, so I'm assuming you've already seen this film, so I'm not going to recap it. You know what the story's about. I really like that a major theme of a large majority of this film is the acceptance of death. As I get older, that's something that's always looming in my thoughts. Every day is another day closer to my death, and I have so many things that I want to do, and will I have enough time to do them? I want to be a successful filmmaker, and my fear is that I'll never make a movie. I don't believe I can ever be truly happy unless I make at least one movie, and I like that it shows the struggling comedians who are trying and putting in the work because they want the same things in life as me, and George has it all. He can make any movie he wants, and when the film starts, he's pretty miserable, and he admits to Laura that he hates his life. He knows he's addicted to the lifestyle, but he thinks he can never be happy unless he has Laura, and Ira calls him out on that, saying, unless you can get away from yourself, you're always going to be miserable. And I think a lot of people are like that, including myself. The second you get what you want something else. I think that's a big reason why George is so successful, because he wanted so much, but I'm sure he got to a point where he just said, I have everything I ever wanted in life, and I'm still unhappy. So he obsesses over Laura, because she's the one thing he can never have. He had it, but he fucked it up by cheating on her. It was probably a form of self-destruction to keep being unhappy because that's just what he's used to. I love the themes of jealousy and competition between Ira and his friends.
Look, I did the exact same thing you've been doing this whole time. You're being competitive. You do that all the time. I'm doing it now.
In the audio commentary, Seth Rogen admits he's had conversations and fights like this with old friends in the past about who deserves the success more, and things like that. And you can tell when he admits this, he's a little ashamed and embarrassed. Adam Sandler and Judd Apatow talked about how when they first started doing well and getting jobs, that they would hear about people who they thought were their friends, saying horrible things about them, and how the friendly competition of Hollywood with their friends turns into angry, bitter, and jealous people who they stop talking to. I can relate to the scene how Leo and Ira get personal attacking each other and they go for blood. I can think of too many moments like this with friends and how I hold resentments in, and it's toxic to keep it in, but this is not the best way to do it, but it's just part of being human. Leo has every right to be angry with Ira. George wanted them both to write jokes for him, but he lied to him because he wants George and the success for himself. But Leo is incredibly competitive and shows off way too much of how he's more successful than Ira before this, so Ira feels justified. I think deep down he knows he fucked over his friend, but Hollywood and show business gets competitive, and I think more actors and artists have done things that they would be ashamed to admit just to get ahead. A great scene, well honestly every scene is great, but an intense scene is when George is yelling at Ira about the TV. Judd said he wrote this because when his mom was sick, she always took it out on the TV, and when she talked about how nothing is right with the TV, everyone knew she was talking about her life. In the audio commentary, which is a great listen, I really recommend it, he says he doesn't like watching or talking about this scene, and Adam Sandler says he doesn't like it either, because when his brother saw it, he told him, I hated that scene because you became dad at his worst. And lately I've been fighting a lot with my sister, and when I think back at certain moments, my dad really came out of me, and I heard my dad in those moments, and I hate my dad. I also really relate to George's relationship with his sister and nephew. He doesn't stay in touch with her because of his relationship with his father, which isn't her fault. I'm a really shitty family member and I don't talk to most of my family, and I feel really shitty about it, but I don't reach out and I don't have a good reason. I think George and I have this thing about wanting to forget our old lives and past, and our family is associated with that life, and it's not their fault. They love us, but they're the innocent bystanders of our demons. I love when George is singing Real Love, which is a cover by John Lennon. If the performance was bad, this scene would be horrible and over sentimental, but Adam Sandler has such a great voice that it works. I honestly like his version more than the original recording, and I love that it shows him with his nephew. This is a beautiful scene, and it really affects me because it's about George finally taking care of the things that are important to him. Another scene that really affects me is the Thanksgiving toast he gives. Everyone in this room is jealous of George because of his success, but George is jealous of them because of their youth. And Judd talked about how when they filmed this scene, him and Adam were really thinking about Chris Farley and how much they miss him and wish he could have seen this film. I think one of the most powerful scenes is George's death song. It tells you exactly what he's thinking, but when he sings it, no one but Ira knows that he's dying, so they just laugh at it. It's so well written, and Adam wrote it himself and just asked Judd to film it, and Judd told him that he loved it, but he didn't think he could use it until he was editing it, and he realized that it was perfect. The lyrics are perfect. It's sad and funny, but really dark. I like seeing George being mean to Ira. I like it because it's funny, but you also feel bad for him. But it helps Ira grow up and be a better person and comedian. His insults hurt Ira at first, but he's mature enough to know there's some truth in them, and that helped him grow. Now let's talk about Laura. Laura gets exactly what she wants. She's mad at George for cheating on her in the past and breaking her heart, and she's mad at her husband for cheating on her now, so she leads George on, then chooses her husband and gets revenge on George, but also gets her revenge on her husband by cheating on him. But it makes him realize he brought all this on himself by cheating on her, and I love that her husband says, underneath anger is hurt, and underneath hurt is love, and some good shit is gonna come from this. I like her husband. He has a few douchebaggy moments, but he seems like a genuinely good guy, cause it sucks so much more when the girl you love is dating someone nice, so you feel like an asshole for wanting her to end it with him. I can relate to that a lot in my past, knowing the girl I loved was in love with a good guy, so I couldn't even hate him, which sucked even more. Eric Bana is an underrated actor. I love him in this and Munich.
Oh, Munich! Munich fucking rules. Munich is awesome.
I don't think Laura knew she was going to choose her husband over George. She does love George, and a part of her always has and will, but that scene when she's showing him her daughter's play of her singing Cats, and he's just on his phone, shows her that he's a very shallow person. Laura's a parent and George isn't, and they're just too different. I can really relate to that moment as Laura looks at him on the phone and she realizes she can't love this man. I've had those singularity moments with girls, and I just knew that second I watched it in theaters that she was going to choose her husband. I love how even Ira knows that he's fucking up. I think a very telling and unlikable moment of George's character is when he's telling Ira he hopes the dad gets the older daughter in the divorce because he likes the little one, but he can sense the older one is going to get her period soon and he doesn't want to deal with that. It's a very funny line that makes me laugh, but it's incredibly selfish and mean. George has shown some very mean and unlikable moments to Ira, but that was when he was sick, so Ira gave him a pass on them, but George is healthy now, and I love that Ira is straight up with George about how he was wrecking this great family for his own selfishness, and George just snaps on him.
You're not my friend. You fucking work for me. I didn't ask for your advice. You're overstepping your boundaries, man. Now go get me a fucking Diet Coke.
If George talked to me like that, I would be so angry and hurt and lose so much respect for him. I do think that it's a pussy move of Ira to go to the airport to try to talk Laura out of it. Even though her husband got to her first and convinced her, the damage is done. Ira went there to fuck over George. I would have just left George at the house after he snapped on me if I was Ira.
It's not a friend, man. A friend tells you. A friend comes up to you and says, hey, you're in a heap of shit. You better not do it. Doesn't run and tell the fucking girl.
I get so mad at George when he says this because that's exactly what Ira did, and George told him, you're not my friend. So I wouldn't have done what Ira did, but I don't feel bad for George, and it would have never worked out with him and Laura. Anyway, they're just too different. Laura's a mature parent and George is a selfish movie star. I'm not saying George is a douchebag, but he can be at times and he knows it, but he's got a few likable qualities. I think he is a person who has isolated himself with his fame and money, and he says it himself. He doesn't have any real friends and isn't close to his family, and even though he is a jerk and abuses Ira sometimes, he does want a friendship with him, and he shows that to him by writing jokes for him. Ira asked him earlier if he could help him write some jokes, and he told him, I pay you to write, I'm not paid to help you. And when George shows Ira he was thinking of him and actually sat down and wrote things for him, Ira appreciates that and begins to forgive him. And the film ends with them bonding over that, but also just bonding over comedy and the creative process. I think it's a beautiful ending. George didn't get the girl he wanted and Ira didn't get the success he wanted, but they became friends through this, and that will make them happier in their lives. And it must be weird for Ira. George is someone who he idolizes and almost like a god to him, and it was a dream come true to work for him, but also disappointing and sad when he got to see the real George with all his flaws, but that's just being human. Ira has his flaws too, with his competitiveness and jealousy towards Daisy, a girl he's had one conversation with and blows up on her for sleeping with his friend when they haven't even gone on one date. And he realizes that he was wrong and hypocritical to yell at her, and he acknowledges that and genuinely apologizes, and she forgives him. And I understand why Ira blew up on her. No one wants to date a girl their friend just fucked, but that's just male ego, and you have to get past that shit sometimes if the person is special enough. But that's what I like about this movie. There is no hero or villain. They're just humans, and humans are flawed. I think in the first half of the film, the looming figure of death feels like the villain, but after George gets better, life looms over him. He says to the doctor, I don't know what to do now. I was pretty good at being sick. Plus, being sick is what got Laura back into his life, because if she didn't think he was dying, she would have never forgiven him for cheating on her in the past. And I get that he had it all and he threw it all away for some girls who he can't even remember their names. But it's like he tells Ira, It's easy to not cheat when no one wants to fuck you. And he has a point. I'm sure every celebrity gets that. It's hard not to cheat when beautiful women are constantly throwing themselves at you. He made his choice and suffered the consequences, but I get what he's saying and I get why she left. But I love that Eminem is like the voice of reason for George. That whole scene is so funny. I mean, so much of the scene makes me crack up, but everything Eminem says is hilarious and intelligent. He tells him, "What are you gonna do now? Fuck another girl that doesn't like you? You're stuck just like me." But the key thing he says is, now that you had the second chance, what do you want to do? And of course he fronts and he says he doesn't want anything at all, but he knows he wants Laura because that's what he's always wanted, and he goes for it. I know a lot of people complain about the last 45 minutes at Laura's house being too long and drawn out, but I love it. That's the point of the film to me. George realizing what he really wants, but not getting it. He fails at winning her back, but that's just life sometimes. It doesn't matter who you are or how famous or rich you are. Sometimes you just can't get what you want. This movie's just deep and human to me, but like I said, it's incredibly funny and relatable on so many levels. This is my favorite comedy of all time because like I said, it's more of a drama. I love so many comedies, and Judd Apatow is truly one of my favorite artists of all time because he always makes us laugh out loud, but he truly respects drama and knows that a comedy works much better if you care and relate to the characters, and the only way to truly relate to someone is to show their flaws, and that creates natural drama itself. It's the reason why Freaks and Geeks still works and this film works. They're not tragedies or even black comedies, but there's a sadness and maturity to both projects that makes them really special to me. I truly love this film and it never gets old to me. It gets better every time I watch it. So that's my review on Funny People. Thanks for watching, keep watching, and you guys know how YouTube works. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and you can contact me and follow me at Instagram at cinemajunkies_. Don't forget the underscore.